name is Martina Queen, and I am a member of this congregation. This is the First Unitarian Church of Honolulu, and I am your worship associate this morning. We are a Unitarian Universalist community, guided by and inspired by our principles, while we are boldly growing compassion, justice, and joy. We are a very busy community. We have a lot going on. And every Friday there is an email sent out, the e-blast and the weekly bulletin, that tells us what activities are happening in the coming weeks. If you aren't on email, or if you're a visitor and you want to see what's going on in this church, you can get a copy of the e-blast and weekly bulletin at the greeters table. We light this chalice with the embers of compassion. We light this chalice with the torch of justice. We light this chalice with the radiance of joy. And now if the cake would come forward for the story of all ages.
Good morning. Hey guys, y'all gonna join me up here? Good morning. My name is Genevieve Corsi, and I am going to be telling the story this morning. And first, I would like to ask, and how are the children today? Tired. You good? All the children are good today? Happy, wonderful, hungry? So after our intergenerational service from last week, I know you guys are all very excited to volunteer with our RE program, and for that reason, we're going to have Maggie, please stand up Maggie, in the art gallery after the service with a clipboard, so feel free to see her to sign up to volunteer with our keiki. Our story this morning, well, our service this morning is about gratitude. Do you guys know what gratitude means? Maggie? Being thankful, exactly. Because what holiday is it going to be? Zappy?
Pumpkin pie.
The pumpkin pie holiday, exactly. Thanksgiving, where we think about what we're thankful for. So our story today is called The Thankful Coat. Once upon a time, there was a little boy named David. And David had a very nice family and a very nice house. And he had a great little sister and a fun puppy. And David had a lot of great things, but there was one thing he did not have. He did not know how to be happy. So David was just never very happy. And there was no matter what he had, no matter what his family did, he just did not know how to be happy. So one day, David was sitting on his swing in the backyard feeling really sad. And a little girl walked into his yard and said, "Hi, my name is Sandy. Have you seen the thankful coat?" And David thought for a moment, "A thankful coat? No, I've never heard of a thankful coat. I've never seen one around here. What does it look like anyways?" And Sandy said, "Well, it is a beautiful coat and it looks like a rainbow." And Sandy said, "Well, let's go look for it together. Maybe we can find it." So Sandy and David looked everywhere. They looked behind the bushes, and they looked around the yard and in the house. And they looked, and they looked, and they looked. And suddenly, they heard a commotion. All of the birds and the bees and the squirrels and the butterflies and the chipmunks and even David's dog, Rusty, they were gathered around a large oak tree. And there on the oak tree, on one branch, hung a beautiful rainbow coat. The animals made beautiful sounds that just sounded like lovely music. And Sandy said, "See, David, here is the thankful coat. Come on, let me put it on you. I bet it will make you feel so happy." So David, not very happily, held out one arm, and he put on his coat over one arm, and then he put in the other arm. And then David said, "Gee, this coat feels awfully nice." All of a sudden, David felt very thankful. Now, David was thankful for the blue sky, and he was thankful for his new friend Sandy, and he was thankful for his dog, and he was thankful for his family, and he just felt very, very thankful. And the more thankful David became, the happier he was. And the happier he became, the bigger his smile became. Can you guys show me your biggest smiles? Awesome. Happy thoughts popped up everywhere in David's mind, and he found the secret to happiness, he thought, to wear the thankful coat. David was especially thankful to Sandy. Sandy, thank you so much for this coat. I can finally feel happy. And Sandy looked at David and said, well, I must leave now, David, and I need to bring this coat to other unhappy children to make them happy as well. And David was really sad. How can you take this coat away now that I'm finally happy? And Sandy smiled and she said, why, David, now that you know the secret to happiness is being thankful, you can make your own thankful coat to wear every single day. And your thankful coat can be an imaginary one, and you can make it in any color you would like it to be. Every day when you get up, you can put on your imaginary thankful coat and start to think of all of the things that you are thankful for, and then you will be happy. Tomorrow morning, you will get up out of bed and put on your imaginary thankful coat, and you think about all these things, and you will be as happy as you are right this very minute. And Sandy gave David a hug, and she said, goodbye, David. I'm so glad that you have the secret to being happy now. And David said, I'm so glad you have found the thankful coat, and that you taught me how to make one of my own. So the next morning, David got out of bed, and he looked at the drawing that hung on the wall, and he put on his imaginary thankful coat. To his surprise, he really did feel happier, and he felt more thankful for everything. And David's smile got bigger and bigger and bigger, and David's life became full of thankfulness and happiness. Now, when you guys go upstairs, I want you to start thinking now what you're thankful for, because you're going to go up to your classrooms, and you're going to make your own thankful coats. So we're going to sing you up, and make sure you're thinking of those thankful, happy thoughts.
We are going to be talking about what it means to be a Gratitudist. Now, I know most of you, if you look it up on the dictionary, probably will not find that word. And even putting it up on the PowerPoint screen, it didn't like it because it had that red squiggly line underneath the word. Nonetheless, this is what we're going to be talking about today, because a couple months ago, during our Building Your Own Theology and Theology classes, we were talking about what it would mean for us to come up with our own religion. So the assignment, I broke them off into 3 groups, was for each of the groups to come up with some qualities and some beliefs and some structure around what their religion would look like. And they only had half an hour to complete this assignment. And it can be done, mind you. After all, L. Ron Hubbard came up with a religion just by writing a book called Dianetics, did he not? And so we're UU, so we're much smarter than that. So it doesn't take us days or hours and weeks and months to come up with a book. It only takes 30 minutes. And so we started grouping some of these ideas together as to what this new religion would look like. And the first group came up with ideas such as, what about looking at the grandeur of the universe? And what about looking at universal salvation? And indeed, I preached on this a couple weeks ago. It's called Universalists. How creative. And lo and behold, thankfully, our name already contains that. So that was the first group. The second group found a lot of comfort and healing and connection whenever they're out in nature. So guess what we call this second group? The naturalists. Not to be confused with naturists. All right? A few of you got it. I won't ask you how you got that, but anyway, the third group came up with this idea. What if every single moment of our lives we said thank you and we appreciated that moment truly and deeply? What if every single moment of our lives we are grateful without ceasing? What would this religion be called? Everybody? Bingo! Y'all are so smart. Either that or you can read what's on the screen. Gratitudists. And so what does it mean to be a gratitudist? Well, we appointed a leader amongst us because she was actually the one that coined the term, and this is Carla Allison. And those of you who know Carla know that everything that leaves out of her mouth is just so positive and so full of gratitude and thankfulness. That's why we appointed her our head Pumbaa, our head guru for this new religion of the Gratitudists. And some of you may think, well, I sure would like to borrow Carla's rosy-colored glasses, rosy-filtered glasses, right? Is that what do you call it? Rose-colored glasses. Yeah, I sure would like to borrow that. Because for me, I'm included in that category. Because for me, oftentimes I go through my life and I go, gosh, really? There's not really that much to be grateful for. My life sucks. It resembles more of a country music than it does a love song or anything. You know, you've heard those country music before, haven't you? Hit it, Dennis. Oh, my life is terrible. I'm so lonesome I could die. My partner left me for my neighbor's cousins, brothers, sisters, uncle. And not only that, but a typhoon, a tornado hit all at the same time. And it carried with it this flying cow that ended up hitting the roof of my trailer. And I could go on and on. You get the picture though, right? So you may say to yourself, yeah, thank you very much, Karen. How many of you have heard of that country music before? It's your life. It's an autobiography, isn't it, Russell? And so we may question ourselves, what is there to be grateful for? But even if your life is a country music, isn't that an opportunity to take it to the Grand Ole Opry? And you may even win a CMA award, a country music award. And my mom might even listen to that song because she's a big country music fan. And I bet none of you have met an Asian woman who's into country music before. So even then, even if your life is so terrible, there's some redeeming qualities about it. And so over the years, the first lesson I've learned about gratitude is that we don't have to reserve it just for the good times in our life. But even in the midst of the tragedy, there is something to be grateful for because life still exists in the midst of tragedy. What do I mean by this? A couple weeks ago, as many of you know, there was a terrible typhoon that hit the Philippines. And I'm so grateful for those of you who have actually come up to me and asked how my relatives were. And thankfully, because of modern day technologies such as texting and emailing and whatnot, most of my family has been accounted for. Except I didn't really know what happened to my uncle and his wife, who actually live in Tacloban, which is where the epicenter of the typhoon and where the greatest damage was in the Philippines. Until about a couple of days ago when I finally got an email from him, and he's actually the pastor of a Chinese evangelical church in the Philippines. And so as he was recounting his quote-unquote testimony, I began picking up on some of the details about what actually happened there and how scary it must have been when the wind hit and when the rain started pouring and when the waves started coming into the city of Tacloban itself. And my uncle started with a thankful message. He said, I'm thankful not only because me and my wife's lives were spared, but I'm thankful that the parsonage is actually on the second floor because the sanctuary itself was flooded after the typhoon hit. And the second thing he was thankful for was that going against his instinct of going down to make sure that the property is safe, leave it up to a Pake uncle to think about the music equipment. That he wanted to make sure that he didn't have to replace that, yeah? And I'm sure our band and our musicians could empathize. We want to save our musical instruments, don't we? So he just had a surgery, and so he couldn't lift heavy objects anyway. And so he decided not to go downstairs. And he said he was thankful for that because what he found out later on was that it was covered in 5 feet of water. So the water had actually rushed in and damaged and destroyed everything in its sight. So even in the midst of the loss of lives, there's something to be thankful for. And my uncle, unlike the 5,000 other people who have lost their lives in the Philippines, were also fortunate that they had access to resources. Apparently, the vice mayor himself went knocking at my uncle's home and said, would you like to go to Manila? Because there's a flight that's waiting for you to go there. So even we come from such a place of privilege. And even in the midst of tragedy, life exists. And I often thought to myself, my uncle must have gotten it from my grandmother. My grandmother, who is a woman of courage, exhibited for me what it means to be a Gratitudist. Here's a woman who was born to a 4th concubine, and after she was born, her mother died, and so she was left in an orphanage without a birth certificate, without knowledge of when she was even born. And I could just picture my grandmother, with that taste of tear that we mentioned earlier about Ancient Mother. Ancient Mother, I could taste your tears. I could imagine her weeping, feeling abandoned by her family, and growing up in such a place as an orphanage, and not having anything to eat other than porridge. And even until the day she died, that was her only diet, was a cup of porridge. And I thought to myself, what a life that must have been, and where did she draw her strength from? And yet, in the midst of it all, she was a grateful woman. She was grateful, number one, that she grew up in a Presbyterian orphanage where they didn't bind girls' feet like the rest of the Chinese girls. You know, I don't know if you all have heard about that idea, but it's the idea that you wouldn't run away from your husband. So if you had bound feet, that you would stay put, stay at home and cook for your husband and all that stuff, right? I was going to say all that BS, but I'm not going to go there. And so my grandmother was grateful for that. She was grateful that she even had food to eat, a roof over her head. And eventually, she was grateful that my grandfather married her and they could start a new life together in the Philippines. And so even in the midst of the hardship, there's so much that we could be grateful for. And that's really what I inherited from her. One of the greatest compliments I ever got from my tutu was when she pulled aside me and my younger sister, and she told her, she said, look up to your brother, because he says thank you a lot. He must be a grateful person. And I thought to myself, you know, I'm not even halfway there to where my grandmother is. I don't think I'm even thankful enough in my life. How many thank you cards have I written in my lifetime? And part of that, admittedly, is because I had terrible penmanship. You would never be able to read my thank you cards. And part of it is, thank you cards are very expensive. Have you been to Long's lately? Mahalo cards are extraordinary. So part of it is that. But part of it is just, I sometimes just don't think about it, or I leave people out whenever I go through my laundry list or my litany of people to thank. And so for me, I find myself falling short sometimes when it comes to being grateful. But all of us, I believe, the moment we wake up, have something to be thankful about. Here's the second part about gratitude. Gratitude, I believe, is the very fuel of life. That without gratitude, that we all might as well die. Think about it. How lucky we are to be alive at this point, at this place. You know, the odds are against you being born. There's a 1 in 700 trillion chance that you would have exited your mother's womb and ended up sitting here today. 1 in 700 trillion. If you went to Vegas with that, you wouldn't be winning much in terms of if you gambled with it. 1 in 700 trillion, and yet we're here. And how do we wake up in the morning? Do we wake up complaining of our backache and wake up that the sun is hitting our eyes, or wake up that, oh, do I have to drag myself out of bed? You all heard about the two ways that we wake up in the morning, haven't you? One could either wake up saying, "Good morning, Lord," or the other way is to say, "Good Lord, it's morning." How do we wake up in the morning? Do we say, "Lucky we live in paradise, lucky we live here in Hawaii," or do we grumble and are we ungrateful for all that lies in front of us? And do we wake up in the morning taking our daily dose of vitamin G, vitamin gratitude, yeah? This vitamin that gives us life actually has been proven to decrease contentiousness and increase our humility. It has the ability to decrease self-sufficiency, thinking that we could do everything ourselves, and increase our interdependence, our ability to connect with one another. It has the ability to decrease our sense of bitterness and anger and increase our sense of contentment and fulfillment. Anybody tried this vitamin before? Can you attest that there's no side effects? However, it is contagious. Being a Gratitudist, I guarantee you, if you hang around those Gratitudists like Carla, pretty soon the things that'll come out of your mouth are also going to be thank you, thank you, thank you. And you'll find that it is indeed mahalo. Ever notice that mahalo contains ha in it? Can we be grateful for the ha, for the gift of life that we receive every single morning when we get out of bed? Let me read a quote to you of why we Unitarian Universalists feel so strongly about gratitude. And Martina actually read it earlier, but I think it's worth repeating. It says, "Grateful for the religious pluralism which enriches and ennobles our faith, we are inspired to deepen our understanding and expand our vision." So our vision sometimes could be clouded by the negative and the dire situations that we may encounter, but gratitude allows us and inspires us to have a different vision. Nowhere and in no place was this more that it hit closest to home for me than last night when we held a service of gratitude for marriage equality. And as I was looking around the room and the colleagues that were there that evening, I thought to myself how grateful I am for the religious pluralism that exists in our world. That Shintos and Buddhists and Hawaiians and Christians of all shapes and sizes could come together to celebrate this historic moment in our state. How grateful I was for that. Yet gratitude for me is not just a fleeting moment. It's not just a moment that we celebrate during Thanksgiving because of peer pressure, because everybody else is thankful, might as well be thankful ourselves. But I believe that in order for gratitude to become one of the hyphens of Unitarian Universalism, we need to practice it 365 days a year. And even during leap years. So that could be 366 too, couldn't it? And so gratitude is a moment and an opportunity for us to reawaken that within us which causes us to pause and think for a little bit. Here's what the Reverend Tom Owenthal has to say about it. He says, it's said that gratitude isn't an emotion or virtue of youthfulness, a status that expects everything to come as a matter of course. As we grow older, feelings of thankfulness blossom. That surely seems to be the case for our maturing Unitarian Universalism in midlife. We just hit the 50 mark as a denomination, by the way. An era when we're declaring our gratitude both individually and communally for the unspeakable favor of existence itself. The unspeakable favor of existence itself. What do we have to be grateful about? I, for one, am grateful that my relationship with this church has only continued to, sorry, we're not at moment of reflection yet, that my relationship with this church has only grown to be sweeter over the past couple of years. In some ways, one would think that the first year, the honeymoon stage, would be that sweet spot. But for me, as we got to know each other better, as we got to know each other's flaws and strengths, and as well as weaknesses, the more mature our relationship became, and the more grateful I was that each of you have become my mentor, and each of you have become my teacher. And I'm also grateful that we are so growing into our mission statement of growing compassion, justice, and joy. And our connection to folks like Kaninui Akea, folks like the churches on the Big Island, folks like the log community. Those are all such wonderful ways that we are able to grow and mature as a community, and I'm so grateful for that. And I'm even grateful, doggone it, for the crisis in our lives. Those moments when we say, yes, it happens. You know, and sometimes with the sh part next to it, that, yes, you know, our E fell apart one Sunday. But you know what? There was an opportunity that came out of that, and I'm grateful that we now have a thriving group of 23 people on our religious education team. And I'm glad that we're utilizing our kids to guilt you into signing up to be volunteers for the RE team. And I am so grateful. I can't even begin to say how grateful I am for all the work that you've done for marriage equality. You've almost lost your career over it. You almost lost your job over it. But you were there, standing with us shoulder to shoulder, making sure that you make an honest minister out of me, and that I'll get to marry my partner of 15 years finally on December 1st at 11 p.m. I am grateful for that. Without you, none of this would happen. And without you, we wouldn't even have a church that we call the First Unitarian Church of Honolulu. So mahalo, mahalo, mahalo. I can't thank each and every single one of you enough. If you too would like to join this religion, sign up now. 1-800-GRATITUD-E-I, whatever. Call whatever number you want to. Make sure you say thank you at the end of the call, all right? May it be so.